have one, so I'm going to leave it blank. Disable IPv6. I'm not going to use it, but I'm also not going to disable it. MTU, not going to touch it. Search domain, I'm not going to add this. It's totally fine. And then it's asking us to set a DNS server. I'll use the host. I don't need to change anything here. MAC address, going to use the default, some randomly generated one that gets assigned to us. And then VLAN, I don't need one there either. Enable root SSH access. This is kind of up to you. I am going to enable it so I can SSH into it, but you can enable or disable this however you want. Enable verbose. Nope, I don't need verbose. And then, hey, am I ready to create it? Yes, I am. There's a lot of questions, but the rest is automated. Now it's going to ask us which storage pool do we want to install this in. Well, I install all of mine into this FAST10, which is RAID 10 kind of sorta. Basically mirrored VDEVs. I have 6 SSDs in there right now, and they're mirrored pairs. So I'm going to choose that one. So first it's downloading that template, right? So it's downloading that LXC template, which is that Ubuntu 2404. Now it's creating the container. Now it's starting the container. Now it's setting up the container, updating it. Now it's installing all of the dependencies for Home Assistant. Now it's installing Home Assistant. So while this is going, I don't typically click off the shell. I'll wait till it's done, because if you click off the shell and then click back, I think you'll get a new shell, and then you really don't know if this is done. Obviously, there are ways to figure out, but I would recommend just waiting here while this gets installed. And there we go. Now it's installed, and it says, hey, we can reach Home Assistant Core now at this IP address on this port. And so that's the IP address that this LXC container has. So if we go to this LXC container and we go into summary, I noticed that it doesn't always show us our IP address here. I don't know what's going on, but if you wanted to and you logged into here and you actually logged in just to prove and you did an IPA, you can see that, hey, there's the IP address that we just saw. I feel like it should show here. I think this is a bug that it's not, because it should show here. I remember it doing that in the past. Anyways, let's check out Home Assistant. So we're going to go to that IP and that port. We go there. Hey, here's Home Assistant, and it's running. So pretty cool. We have Home Assistant up and running pretty quickly. So this is probably a good place to mention how this differs from Docker. If you think about it, what we just did was spin up an Ubuntu LXC container, right? Now we're sharing our kernel with the host, but then we've manually or automatically installed all of the dependencies that we needed along with Home Assistant. So that means that this lightweight virtual machine, this LXC container, has all of those dependencies installed on it, right? And so if you go and run an apt update, dist upgrade, and you update it, you're going to update all of those dependencies. And that might be what you want, and it might not be what you want. Just think, for instance, if you had a dependency like SQLite for Home Assistant, and Home Assistant was only compatible, say, I'm going to make this up, but anything lower than SQLite 10, and then you ran an apt update and apt upgrade, and you upgraded SQLite to something higher, say like 11, now you just might have broken Home Assistant. So I mean, it's the same concept you have in virtual machines. You're just going to have to manage all of your dependencies wisely. Whereas in a Docker container, it ships with all of its dependencies. It's bundled up inside of a container image, and you pull down and run that image as is. I'm only calling that out because, as you'll see later on, we're going to update all these containers, and if they ever break, that's kind of up to you to figure out, rather than in Docker, the dependencies ship with the container. Anyways, we're not using Docker, so I'm not going to talk about it, but I want people to know kind of, I guess, where the landmines are. So anyways, we got Home Assistant going. That's pretty awesome. Let's do a couple of other things right now. So let's go back to our scripts. We can install a lot of other things now. I'm not going to do it, but one thing I did want to call out is Turnkey. So we can install Turnkey appliance-based LXC containers. So Turnkey is really cool. It's a collection of LXC containers that have applications already installed in them, and you can think of them like virtual appliances. Basically, think about it like a mini virtual machine. They could pull down and run, and everything's pre-configured. So it's really cool. And so typically, you could install these in Proxmox, but the Proxmox helper scripts help us do that a little bit easier. So if we wanted to install a Turnkey LXC container, let's go to Turnkey right here. Let's copy this command. Let's go into our shell. Let's run this. We want to say, yes, we want to install a container. Now it's asking us, hey, which one do we want to create? So I'm just going to pick any in here. I'll try to pick one that's a little bit smaller, because a lot of these are pretty big. I mean, Nextcloud might be kind of small. Let's just do it. Nextcloud. I could install all of Git or GitLab, but I feel like that's going to take a little bit. But let's just choose Nextcloud. I'm going to say OK. Where do we want to store the container? Well, I'm going to do it on my fast array. Once a Turnkey LXC container is done, you'll see this right here where it says, hey, our login is root, and then some password to it. And then you'll see an IP address up here. At first, I was a little bit confused on what this was, but we'll need to go to this IP address, and then we'll need to log in with this account root with this password. And what we'll want to do is actually SSH into that machine. If you try to go to that IP address like I just did, you're going to see this helpful screen that says we need to initialize the system, and we can't do it without SSH. So it's actually nice they put that there. We'll need to SSH into here, and they actually give us the command. So let's SSH into the server. Yes, I want to accept. Now what's the password? It was that password that it showed us in the shell. Now we SSH in, and so now we need to do a few more things. First, we'll need to set up MySQL password for the account adminer. So let's add a password, confirm. Now we'll need a password for the Nextcloud admin account, confirm. Now it's telling me the password I tried to use for that admin account is on a compromised password list because it was kind of sort of password. Yeah, it's a demo account, so let's put a real one. All right, now the domain, it's fine me doing example.com. Now it's going to ask me stuff about using Turnkey Hub, which I'm not, so I'm going to skip this. Whether or not I want email notifications, going to skip this too. Security updates, hey, do we want to install them? I'm going to say yes. Now it's going to update that LXC container. Now it's asking us if we want to reboot this container now. Yes, we do. Should go really quick because it's an LXC container. And if we go back to here, we can see that this container is now here, Turnkey Nextcloud. If we go out to the IP address, we can see we have a self-signed cert. If we go out to the IP address, we can see we're at the Nextcloud screen. Now, there's some other things we need to do, but you can see that it's actually working. Kind of. It's because we didn't set our domain name properly. Not important. What is important is that we got it installed through a Turnkey LXC container. So now that we have a couple of containers running, I installed a few while it was going. I have Home Assistant, Nextcloud, Pi-hole, Homepage, Cloudflare D. And as you start to build up these containers, you'll want to make sure that they stay up to date. So they actually have a Proxmox helper script for them. So if we go back into the Proxmox VE tools, what we can do is we can set a cron job to update all of our LXC containers. So if we copy this out here, we go back into our shell and paste it in here, what this is going to do is help us set up a cron schedule to update all of our containers. So you can add or remove. We haven't added one yet, so let's add it. Do we want to proceed? Yes, and done. So it's going to do it every Sunday night, I think at midnight. But if we want to go and we want to remove that schedule, we can remove it that easy. Or if we want to go back and we want to add it and say yes, we can add it back. So now it's going to update all of our LXC containers automatically. So pretty cool. If we wanted to run it now, what we could do is run this LXC updater. Let's run this script. Back to our shell, we'll run this now. And this is going to update all of our LXC containers, basically the same thing that cron job was going to do, but we'll run it now just to see. And it sees all of our LXC containers. Let's select them all. Obviously, you could deselect ones you didn't want to update. And it's going to go through and update them all. And it did update them really quick. So another thing that I noticed in here is that it has this thing called monitor all. And what this does is monitor each LXC container and make sure it's still alive. And if it's not alive, I think it will reset it. So let's run this script right here. And it's asking, hey, do you want to add this monitor to all? Let's add it. Yes, we want to monitor all. And I think we just added the script right there. So I haven't had any problems with LXC containers getting hung up. And I haven't had that with VMs either. But if you do have that problem, or you don't know if you have that problem and just want to make sure that you don't, you can actually install this script to where it will reset those containers if they do get hung. So pretty cool. So if you want to support their work, you could do this on their website by buying them a coffee right here, or you can also go out to GitHub and then going to this coffee link as well and supporting them there. I think it's a great project. It's an easy way to spin up and test LXC containers, and it gives you a lot of helper scripts that help you manage your Proxmox installation. Well, I hope you enjoy Proxmox helper scripts. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Tim. Thanks for watching.
Hey kids, who wants to play Guess Who?
I don't like that game. It's not inclusive.
Yeah, it only has 2 genders.
Not anymore!
Yay!
Introducing the all-new Guess Who, now with all 437 genders.
Is your person by gender?
Mom, you cannot determine someone's gender based on their appearance. That's disrespectful and offensive.
Is your person a demi-boy?
Identifying someone solely based on their gender is reductive and offensive.
Does your person look like someone who is trying to adopt the appearance of a traditional female?
Privileging traditional gender stereotypes is patriarchal and offensive.
437 gender Guess Who. Great for the whole family. Family may include but is not limited to single-parent families, blended families, chosen families, LGBTQIA+ families, and should not be defined solely based on blood relations or legal ties, and can be found in friendships, communities, and other relationships where everyone feels valued and respected for who they are.
This game has too many pieces.
It's taking forever.
Do you want this game to be easy to play? Or do you want us to be inclusive?
Inclusive.
437 gender Guess Who. Hours of endless fun. Fun is not meant to suggest an enjoyable or pleasurable experience, but rather one that elicits a feeling of smug self-satisfaction about being on the right side of history and a sense of superiority over others who are not as enlightened or evolved. 437 gender Guess Who can be found at your local Target or BDSM shop. Batteries not included except as an additional gender.
Honey Nut Cheerios.
Is it okay to stop playing?
I don't know. I think it might be offensive.
Oh, great. I just got an alert from the game company. They discovered 7 more genders. And they're sending the new pieces over tonight.
Yay!
I still can't wrap my head around this gender theory concept.
I'm going to show you a highly classified document. It's the new Babylon Bee book, the Babylon Bee Guide to Gender.
It actually helps you choose your gender, gives you all kinds of ideas for your different pronouns, and it educates you on all 437 genders.
And they got stick figures.
Excuse me. Did you just throw your salad packaging in with the regular trash? We need to recycle plastic to protect our planet. Thank you.
Actually, this plastic container has a polyethylene lining, meaning if it was in the recycling, it would contaminate the whole container, and it would all go into a landfill. So, excuse me, yeah. But, nice job. It's nice to see you're trying to do better. But perhaps next time you could try just a little harder. Thanks.
Did that salad actually contain meat in it? I didn't take you for an animal hater. Personally, I don't eat meat because I love all of God's creatures.
And, how was your fishing trip?
That's different. I don't eat them.
No? You just plucked them from above like some alien abduction? Apparently your love for God's creatures doesn't include sea creatures. Interesting.
You know, I didn't know you love the sea creatures, which is so interesting because I see you're drinking an iced tea from a plastic straw, which will undoubtedly end up in the ocean and right up the nose of some poor baby sea turtle. But that's so great that you love the creatures of the sea.
Now that we're on the subject of water, could you try to not do your laundry on the hottest water setting when warm is just as good and is much, much better for the environment?
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Did I take some of the hot water away from your weekly bubble bath? Because personally, I'm okay with cold showers because I actually don't feel the need to bathe myself with 50 gallons of boiling hot water.
You know, some of us like to relax after a week of cycling to work, while others use gas guzzlers.
My car's electric.
And where do you think the electricity comes from, Malcolm? Yeah, that's right. Big oil! You're basically funding Russian billionaires. Congratulations.
Oh, you're anti-billionaire now. Wow, that's so interesting. With your buddy Jeff Bezos sending you a weekly package of animal-tested beauty products while paying his workers minimum wage, putting small mom-and-pop companies out of business. But sure, go off, Queen.
Oh, well, why don't you save it for your tweets to Elon Musk on your iPhone, made by a child slave in India?
Oh, so you're racist now. Bravo.
How dare you clap in my face when you know that there are neurodivergent children that would much prefer finger snapping?
Look at us. What are we doing? This isn't us.
You're right. We're good people. We're not perfect, but at least we try.
Yeah. I mean, we make mistakes, but we're trying to do better. Yeah. You know, the world could use more people like us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, you ready to go to that rally?
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
Remind me, is the seal clubbing before or after the rally?
It's during it.
Oh, great. That'll save us a trip.
Yeah.
Chips. Microchips.
Oh no, you landed on Boardwalk. Ooh, looks like you owe me $1,200.
Oh no! If Bill goes bankrupt, we're all gonna fall like dominoes.
Wait, guys, I've got it. If we all pool our resources into one big pot, he'll be able to pay off his debt, and we'll all be able to split the money when Joe lands on our collectively owned property. It's a long shot, but if Bill passes go and gets 200 and lands on a decent property right now, we'll have enough money to be back in this thing.
Hey, you can't own property as a group.
Yeah, but I don't see anything in the rulebook that says we can't change property every turn. Let's do it.
Here you go.
Hope you guys trust each other.
And since I rolled doubles, time to go again. Come on. Please be my lucky roll.
Yes! Yes, it's ours! It's all ours!
Finally!
No longer will he oppress and exploit us. Have you lost your minds?
Have we lost our minds? We toil day in and day out for the spoils to go to one man, for everything we've worked for to be taken from us.
You killed him!
He was killing us, can't you see?
It's just a game!
Just a game?
That's what you theocratic reactionaries always say, isn't it? There's some other world outside of this one where things will be set right. Nonsense!
Are you serious?
We must control our destiny, here and now. All of the property belongs to the masses now.
As it is meant to be.
Yes! Let's all celebrate! Finally, we made...
$1,200?
Huh?
That's $1,200. You landed on our property. You owe the community $1,200.
But I don't have enough.
Are you trying to sabotage the party?
No!
Park Avenue is no longer open for non-high-ranking party members. Now roll the dice. Fine. I landed on the train tracks. I own them. The train tracks are public property. What? You owe $250. But I only have $80 left. No, we have $80 left. Open up. It's the police.
Yes?
You are hereby under investigation for your association with your husband, Paul, a well-known enemy of the proletariat and the party.
No! Oh my gosh, no!
Do you renounce him?
My husband?
Do you renounce him, or will the party need to execute him?
No! Please, no!
Sign this form. Good. You are a worthy citizen. Your children will thank you. Paul, we know you're guilty of high crimes against the state. It's not true! Then why did your wife sign this document renouncing you?
+1.
No!
20 minutes and 37 seconds.
I don't believe it! Even your family sees that you're a criminal. Why don't you confess? Or we'll have to find the real criminal. Perhaps someone else who resides in your home. No. You're trying to kill me, aren't you?
What?
Both of you, you're plotting to kill me!
Oh, I am so sick of this crap! If you're gonna kill me, just do it!
No! Don't leave me alone!
I am a martyr for my people. It's been 2 years since the 6th Street Massacre, where a police officer murdered the peaceful leader of a communist autonomous zone. The officer was sentenced to life in prison earlier today.
Well, sentencing is an outrage. That police officer shot a man who just killed his friends over a game of Monopoly.
That's fascist revisionism! They were plotting to murder him! He had signed confessions! Ugh, so like the United States to go in and sabotage a functioning communist government.
Do you want to get pancakes after? Well, it depends. I'm like down, but you're distracting people who are trying to play. Lucky for them, there's Halo. Halo's the #1 Christian prayer app in the US and the #1 Catholic app in the world. It helps you pray, meditate, and sleep better. Wake up to a gospel reading and reflection by biblical scholar Jeff Havens. Work alongside Gregorian chant and Catholic lo-fi, and fall asleep at night to a Bible story read by people like Mario Lopez or Jonathan Ronay. If you use the link halo.com/freedomtunes, you'll get an extended 3-month trial free. Halo, say your prayers.
Johnny Harris is a creator and a journalist. In a home feed so often dominated by reacts and hot takes, Johnny craves sources, attribution, rigor. From his OG Emmy-nominated Border series for Vox, to his video op-eds for the New York Times, to his own channel, where he covers everything from the geopolitics of the world to why fast food ice cream machines are so broken, so always. Johnny wants to reinvent how reporters deliver the news, and he wants to do it on YouTube. And I'm Renee Ritchie, YouTube's official creator liaison, but also former editorial director for Mobile Nations, where I covered tech news online and in videos for over a decade before going indie, building my own channel, and trying to figure out my own intersection of education and audience growth. And that's what we're here to talk about: the power, the responsibility, the trade-offs, and the potential of news on YouTube. On this, the Creator Insider Podcast. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts about the state of news and journalism on YouTube and in the creator community?
I have two totally polarized thoughts on this. One is excitement and optimism about the future of creators being able to report and share on the platform, while at the same time being very conscious of the fact that like the journalism pillar that has kept our society accountable and transparent and informed is currently being hollowed out at a massive rate. I think that's a disruption that is necessary. I think it's inevitable. We need to have an updating of how we learn about what's happening in the world, how that transitions onto new media platforms and into more of an independent-minded creator ecosystem is exciting. It's an opportunity. It's what we are building our operation off of. but it's also unsure how we replace that in a responsible way.
Yeah, it's super interesting to me because I was one of the early bloggers, and I would show up for events or briefings, and the traditional magazine and newspaper journalists would be saying, like, what are these people? Yeah. But then I saw the YouTubers come in, and the bloggers were like, why are they here? Yeah. And now we see YouTubers going, well, why are short-centric creators here? Yeah. And it seems like no one developed empathy going the other way.
Totally. It is a very natural, normal thing, especially how quickly it's going, that we call them capital J journalists are always looking down and deciding you're not a real journalist because you do it on YouTube or whatever. I'm pretty allergic to that snobbery. I think that journalism is the act of sharing facts and reporting facts in a rigorous way to people, whatever form that takes. It isn't a credential. It is not a badge. It is an activity. And it can happen in any format. And in a world where people are consuming information in these other formats, journalism will and should go to those formats as long as they keep doing that core activity of sharing factual information. Now, the part where I start to get nervous is, do the platforms incentivize accuracy and facts, or do they just incentivize engagement? And engagement is not the same as factual information. And so I'm hoping that we can find a way to make the platform a healthy ecosystem for facts and accuracy, and not just time spent and engagement.
It's interesting looking at the evolution, because back in the day, you read all about it. You had a bunch of kids on the corner kind of sell their papers, and you would walk down and pick this one. But then for a while, everything got aggregated into cable news or into big newspapers, and you could afford enterprise content. Like classifieds would pay for everything. And now with the advent of the internet, everything has been atomized again, and you have one blog post, one video, one short, and it feels like we're back in that like Times Square, everyone like yelling for your attention.
Which, again, there's some that incentive structure of having to get the attention of people to read your story, I think is a good thing in a lot of ways. It gets it as a storyteller, it really makes me consider how I present it so that it really does appeal to a lot of people. But I think that atomizing of content has gotten rid of those buffers that we used to have. The classifieds or the crossword on one side, and then the front page, if it bleeds, it leads, kind of like sensationalism on the other side. Those are the things that people are buying for. But in between those pages, you have spotlight investigations that took 6 months. You have corruption exposés that kept...
enterprise journalism.
Yes, the stuff that really is the heart and soul of a healthy society. So I know, unfortunately, on my team, that's not possible. Every video that I make has to be entertainment and front page. Like, it has to be that first. And then I try to bring in the sort of meat and potatoes. We are hoping to build a network of multiple channels so that we can recreate that sense of subsidy where certain channels will float the deeper dive stuff, even though it's not as economically viable. Because we've built out at scale, we're able to do that. I don't know how possible it is. That's what we are trying to build. But I do know that that's the major weakness in this shift to independent creators. For all the wonderful parts of it, it has that major weakness.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of like you have Wendover and then you have Half as Interesting.
Yeah.
You could have Johnny Harris and then Half as Geopolitical.
Yeah, exactly.
Build that buffer.
Yeah.
But to your previous point, also back then there were so few opportunities. If you weren't working for a paper of record or the anchor for a nightly news show, your reach was incredibly limited. It was incredibly gatekept. And now theoretically anybody who hit the upload button can build that kind of audience.
Yes, and that's the like shining upside of this whole thing, is that I would have probably never been able to be a journalist in a traditional ecosystem. I just didn't have the personality for it. I didn't fit into that. And luckily Vox was this nice hybrid that allowed me to be a little bit more entrepreneurial, to develop my own voice, to be able to share and explain in my own tone that resonated with an audience in a direct to consumer type of way. And so I owe my entire career to this format, to this direct to consumer approach. And we'll shout from the rooftops how good it is. Like I don't want to be a doomsday about it. I think it's good. I do think that the platform will have to make smart decisions to make sure that it is that we are incentivizing the right things and prioritizing the right things on the platform. And then on the other side, I don't know what's going to happen with the supply side of this in terms of how journalists are going to enter this ecosystem and stand accountable and have their own self-imposed boundaries for rigor and factual accuracy. No one's going to hold you accountable, and that is a real challenge. But it's also an opportunity that we are wrestling with every day and doing it quite well, and I'm excited about it.
There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, you and I have similar backgrounds in that I worked for a big media company making YouTube videos for many years, and then I went independent, where your background was with Vox, and then you went independent. What was that transition like?
It was pretty natural, actually. Again, the strength of Vox is that they did plant the seeds of giving me a voice and saying, like on the internet, if it works, you can do more of it. That was the great gift that they gave me. Yeah, we're an organization. Yeah, we have a unified voice. But if you make something that's good, we'll keep supporting it. Now, I reached a limit to where it didn't work. They couldn't really facilitate a sort of individual person within their organization, that wasn't really in the sort of roadmap for them. And so it made sense for me to jump ship. But what I was doing was just continuing kind of a trajectory that they had
Hello
given
Evolve
me. And so
needed that
I didn't
PC
really
stall.
jump ship from like a super legacy dinosaur organization to new media. I had this really nice stepping stone that taught me a lot about being on the front lines of creator economy and things like that. Now, what I had to do that was hard was learn how to build a business, learn how to be an entrepreneur, learn how to build an organization. And my partner, business partner, and life partner is really did that. You know, like she's the mastermind behind our organization, and allowed me to keep doing what I did well, which is make videos, while she sort of built out this big media company to support it.
One of the things that I found really interesting was coming from a background in traditional media, I only had to worry about editorial. I didn't have to worry about advertising, monetization, anything like that.
Hello
There was a
Evolve
firewall.
needed that.
I couldn't own stock in the companies that I reported on. I couldn't do like deals. I couldn't have brand deals with companies that I was doing reviews for.
Yeah.
It was very, very firewalled.
Yeah.
Where in the creator community, you do have some creators who have journalism backgrounds who keep those rigid structures, but others see themselves as entrepreneurs. And
Yeah.
it's natural for them to take equity, for example,
Totally.
in companies that they cover, or to have sponsored reviews. Where do you see those lines shifting?
Those lines are shifting all over the place, and they're not clear. They're not clear where those ethics sort of lie. The ethics that you learn in journalism school, which I didn't go to journalism school, but I've heard them over the years. We are violating all of them immediately where we are. Like, it's just they want there to be a giant garden wall between editorial and business, and we don't have the luxury to do that. Now, we've created some boundaries that really help do that. Again, like Iz runs the business. She comes over into editorial and sort of helps direct vision for the editorial. But when it comes down to pressing the buttons on the facts and reporting on the thing, I really try to have some blinders on to any kind of business interests. We say no to a lot of sponsors. We don't take equity. We don't take money from United Arab Emirates, you know, like, or China or whatever, like people that we have to be hard on. But there's a lot of things we do that traditional journalists would be uncomfortable with that I feel totally comfortable with. We don't let any brand have editorial control or influence on the videos that we make, but we do give them editorial control over the ad read that we do in the middle. We let them do that. And that's me saying those words. And, you know, that would cross the line for a lot of people. For me, it doesn't, because the journalism stays pure. It stays unbiased, and at least from the brand. And I feel comfortable. But everyone's going to have to draw those lines for themselves. And luckily, I do think that accountability here comes from the audience. Audiences are the ones to call you out and say, like, oh, that crossed the line. This is too much. And sometimes too much. They'll get kind of conspiratorial about it. So I actually strangely feel some sense of safety that the audience will feel betrayed if you cross that line, and it will deter you back.
Yeah, it's super interesting because we saw that in radio for a while. For example, Howard Stern got to the point where he felt like, I'm not being paid for a sponsor read. They're my fans, and they want to hear me. They want to hear their company, like me speaking about their company, and that became the value prop beyond just reaching my audience.
Yeah, it's how you think about value, and you as a creator, and that you have fans, and that you saying it is very different than just like a cutaway to an ad. That those are the thorny questions here. But ultimately, I like to think of our videos as a piece of journalism, has a commercial break in the middle, that is paid for by a corporation that supports our journalism. You know, like, we can't do it in any other way. And I try to tell the audience, we can't make videos without sponsors. So thank you, NordVPN, for sponsoring today's video. You know, like, I'll say that very overtly, because I believe that it is, I mean, I don't believe it. It is factually accurate that our business would not be able to run without this creator economy model. And I'm really grateful. You know, like, we have a great team. We're able to go really deep on topics because we take sponsorships, and because I do those ad reads, I don't have to compromise my journalistic values to do them. And I think that's a really cool reality that, like, opens up a lot more possibility for creators.
I've talked to a lot of journalists who are thinking about doing what you've done, and that there is that sort of concern, like, how do I monetize this if I don't have this whole company around me, if I don't have all these other hosts, all these other entities? How do you think about monetization on your channel?
So this is a real challenge for a lot of people who are leaving, and there's a lot of them leaving traditional journalism and wondering, what's my place in this new economy? I will say that it is difficult. It's not an easy thing. You have to be an entrepreneur. You have to kind of be a business person, be business minded, if you are going to enter in as a brand new creator who has to make money. YouTube is the best place to do it, because it is an economy, it is an ecosystem that supports that, but you still do have to hustle, especially if you want to do deep dive journalism. So what we've decided to do, in addition to my channel, we have built a production company that is a business where we are actually recruiting journalists to come on and start their own channel as if it's their channel. They're on the front lines. It's their channel. They're not associated with us, you know, on the front facing side of it. But under the hood, we are, you know, they're full-time employees. We actually own their channel. We're helping them with all of our resources. We're helping them get deals. We have all of our business relationships. And that way they can still do the creator economy thing. They're on the front lines of it. They can get in on the upside of the business, but they don't have to expose themselves to that extreme risk on day one, which, like, a lot of journalists don't want to do. That's not their craft. Their craft is not entrepreneurship. It is storytelling and factual journalism.
Risk aversion is real.
Your risk aversion is very real, and often among these people. So that's our solve. It's a little teaspoon in the bucket here in terms of what will need to happen to get more journalists on the platform. And I think that's something YouTube has to think about. How do we make YouTube a place where you don't have to jump into the cutthroat creator economy to just even make a living on day one? I don't have the solution for that, but our solution is to try to build a federation of creators that all benefit from an operational umbrella that takes the risk down on day one.
It's almost like you figure out the infrastructure and then you start sharing and scaling that.
And it's a much easier thing for them, just information wise. Like we have wisdom on day one that it took us 5-6 years to learn. They don't have to go through that. And then all the monetary stuff, we sort of help buffer that. So that's sort of our vision. That's what we're building now. We've launched our first channel search party in that ecosystem, and we're getting ready. And it's gone well, and we're getting ready to launch future channels.
And how do you look at packaging it? Because the other thing is, this is journalism, this is investigative, it's educational, but a lot of people just want entertainment. I used to look at it like I'm making a crunchy educational video in like a candy coating. That was a way to get people in the door. How do you think about it from like thumbnail and title, which might to get attention might need to be more than what you want as a journalist. But if you don't do that, it's the same as you're like, if without a good title, no one's going to read your work.
Exactly. It is cutthroat. You're competing with cat videos and Mr. Beast and everyone else. And if you want to do factual information, like just because it's factual, it doesn't mean it's going to get clicked, which is a big problem here in terms of facts are not the same as engagement, and accuracy is not incentivized in these algorithmic platforms. At the same time, as a journalist who also believes in good storytelling and good filmmaking, I think that this is a necessary reconciliation for us journalists to recognize that we do have to package our information. We do have to be disciplined about communicating to the masses. And I feel like a lot of journalism has gotten complacent in writing for, communicating to peers and elites, and not actually communicating to the masses. So in some sense, I think it's a very useful nudge to say, if you want to get audience, you have to make your facts engaging. Now that is an incentive that can go way too far and can turn into pure entertainment. And we've actually felt that incentive structure to go towards more sensational, dark, heavy. So you are in this tumultuous sea of the algorithm. And I think that's a double-edged sword. I think you're going to have to play the game. Again, you just need to have those boundaries to say, what can't change is my commitment to rigorous factual accuracy. Even if the packaging gets a little bit more sensational and I'm, doing this on a thumbnail every time and all of that, like that may have to happen, but the journalism doesn't change, hopefully.
To the algorithm thing, I'm going to put on my Todd Beaupre, mutual friend Todd Beaupre hat for a minute. And I think like it also, sometimes we worry about the algorithm, but we also have the ability to pick our audiences. And to your point, it can be really tempting to say, hey, if I go in this direction, there's this huge audience. Like tabloids were sold at the counter because that was where people would spend way much more time. One of my favorite stories is the Nielsen ratings. When they were a journal, everybody wrote PBS. But as soon as they went digital, it turned out what they actually watched was TMZ.
Oh, funny.
Because people have this idealized version of themselves. But I think like part of it is we make choices, and maybe my choice here is it's not going to appeal to this part of this very massive audience, but these are the people I really want to reach.
Yeah, and my hope is that in this atomized journalism landscape, there are a bunch of smaller creators who are reaching the audience that really matters for them. And maybe they're not the big giant creators that it's a sort of a long tail of tons of little smaller creators reaching niche audiences. If they can sustain businesses doing that, which is an open question, is the creator economy mature enough that it will actually support smaller creators? Because right now in my world, bigger is bigger and more is more. Like we in order to do more rigorous journalism, we have to grow to a certain critical mass so that we can take the time to do those deep dives. Otherwise, we're just feeding the beast every 3 weeks to keep money coming in. So there is a trade-off there, and there is an incentive to try to reach the biggest audience. We're in this right now. We want a way bigger audience, and our big question is, if we broaden that aperture to a more widely appealing format and story selection and approach, taking from the masters like Mr. Beast and Mark Rober, et cetera, Chris Kazat, will that have a trade-off effect on our commitment to rigor? And our working theory is no. We can thread that needle. We can do a mass appeal that is also highly journalistic. TBD though on whether or not that's going to work. I hope it works, and I believe it will, and that's the strategy we're pursuing. But there may be a ceiling as to how big of an audience we can get if we're committed to 30-minute sort of documentary type pieces of journalism.
One of my favorite things about YouTube is, and forgive me if you heard the story before, but back in 2015, they decided that watch time alone, like originally it was just clicks, but then people would clickbait. And they said, but maybe watch time is a good indicator. The longer people watch, that means they're really interested, but then people would just try to make things artificially long. So they switched to satisfaction as the metric. And they decided not all watch time is created equal. Like people will rubberneck, they'll watch something bad and they won't feel good about themselves. And maybe they'll keep watching now, but they might not come back as often. Whereas if you are willing to take the short-term loss of like not feeding that pure engagement cycle, but to think about really satisfying the audience, maybe I'm satisfied, I'll stop watching right now, but they'll come back more frequently. I think that's a sort of investment where you can do these things like the latest geopolitical modern conflict, and then why is my ice cream machine broken at McDonald's? That sort of lets those things play against each other.
And what we've found is we have an incredibly consistent audience who comes back. Our views are very, very consistent because I think we have fulfilled on that promise of like nourishing content. You're going to have a good experience, even if the topics that we choose to cover are all over the place. People come back for the storytelling and the experience they have. We're trying to determine, instead of people coming back just for the storytelling, can we package what we make to just have broad appeal on some of those hookier, kind of more trendy ways of that were the reasons why people click. But then once they're in the door, almost surprise them with, we call it folding in the vegetables or burying the vegetables, where we kind of like, we present them with this thing that feels very clicky, but then we satisfy them with this kind of surprising sense of like, oh, I'm learning, I'm going to stick around. So yeah, valued watch time, that valuable experience is a massive thing that we think about. The question is, that it costs a lot of money to make that. And will there be a sort of premium put on the creators that take the time to like really make that experience, or not? Maybe it doesn't take a lot of money to do that, and valued watch time can happen in a low budget way. But like for what we have to do to make valued watch time also be factual, that is a very big proposition. We have a whole team of reporters to make that an experience. We have a whole team of editors and animators and a music composer to make sure that it's all a great package. And my hope is that we can continue to do that to bigger and bigger audiences.
That's a traditional thing with op-ed too. Like op-ed, the requirement for fact, like you had to be within bounds, but it was very different than a big investigative piece. And a lot of people, I think, on YouTube skew towards op-ed because you can just turn on the camera and give an opinion, and it doesn't have to go through that sort of rigor.
Totally.
I remember Stephanie from MatPatch, she gave this really good, she said they have a typical formula, which is they have like a hook and then a hypothesis, and then evidence, big plot twist, and then conclusion. And that was their structure for almost every theorist video, like game theorists, film theorists, all of those videos. Do you have a structure that you base?
I have some loose formulas that we know work for our intros, and our intros are often story promise. And this idea again comes from my partner who really believes that like in the first minute, especially in the format of YouTube, but in all good storytelling, someone should feel some kind of signaling as to what's coming in the next 30 minutes, and whether or not we are promising to answer a question, to take them on a journey, to give them an experience. It's almost like a trailer.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always have to be an explicit trailer, but something that nods to, hey, it's worth sticking around here. We've put a lot of work into this. So the intros to our videos very much do that. And then and signal all kinds of things: production value, adventure, factualness. You're going to learn. Like we try to make sure all of that is in there. From there, I have all kinds of different ways of plotting a story, but it's often visual anchor, something that you can zoom into and say like, I not knowing anything about this topic can see this thing and understand what's going on here. And then context. So it's visual anchor context. Visual anchor context is sort of one rubric we use. But honestly, and this has been a blessing and a curse, what I love about the YouTube channel being independent is there is no formula. Every video is a totally different thing. And we have a whole new art direction every single time and a new score every single time. And I love that. That's the beauty of YouTube, is that they don't demand it to be perfectly on brand and every color scheme's the same, because it allows us to morph as storytellers and to be different. And that's the kind of ethos that I love about the platform, and the reason I don't want to leave the platform.
We hear that sometimes, like from creators, people don't always remember what their videos were about, but they remember the way they made them feel.
Yes.
I remember in our first episode of this podcast, Chucky from Mr. Beast, he does all his thumbnails and packaging, and he was saying that like the thumbnail makes a promise that the video has to deliver on. But if you over deliver on that, it creates trust. So it's not just about like the retention per video, but across videos.
Totally.
And then people start binging, and they trust that when they click on your thumbnail, they know what they're going to get.
Totally. And that long-term trust, that valued watch time over months and years, it's our currency. Cultivating that is so much more important than getting that sort of one viral video. And so we've taken these years to just make sure that we're really cultivating that, we're delivering. And I think we've done a good job to where we do have a very firm, loyal sort of base of audience who trusts us. Now we want to see, again, what that looks like. Can we build that out to a much larger audience? That includes dubbing, multi-language audiences, but that also includes audiences that maybe wouldn't have watched a deep dive war explainer, but would watch Johnny Trains with the Japanese Army. And it actually is a war explainer, but it's done in this more entertaining way, but we still can fold in the vegetables of like rigorous journalism throughout the whole thing. That's sort of our vision next, is like, can we keep that trust in these flashier, more entertaining formats? And that's an open question for us.
We have so many formats now. That's the other interesting thing, just from a journalism point of view. You have traditional long form, podcasts, live, doing live coverage, and shorts now. There's a huge interest in short form video, but how does that square with sort of the deeper work that you've been doing?
There's a tension there for sure, in the sense that I do deep dive explainer journalism, and to try to pack that into 1 minute is not easy. However, as the person who promised he wasn't going to be the curmudgeon about the new age way of consuming, we've jumped on board with shorts to try to add value in that format. People are spending time there. YouTube follows that demand with their product, and thus we have to join that if we want to stay relevant. And so yes, there's a trade-off. What we've decided to do, whereas our long form is contextual, it's sort of relevant for 18 to 24 months in terms of longer news cycles, our shorts are a way of serving people much more of like a breaking news analog.
Yeah.
Still very personal, still very broken down, but explaining that in Yemen right now, there's this thing happening in the Red Sea, blah, blah, blah. This just happened over here. It's also a place where we test new ideas. We did a video about submarines last year, and that was actually a short first. We did a little quick explainer on how crazy nuclear submarines are. It got a lot of attention, and then we saw that as sort of a focus group for a video that could work in long form. So there's also that. I see shorts as a funnel for the longer form stuff, because I don't believe that shorts is a space for discourse or community. It is a space for sort of slot machine scrolling that's fun, and I love it as a consumer, but it does not foster the same thing that being in a long form environment, leaving a comment, subscribing does. And that's my big critique of TikTok. TikTok is not a community social platform. It is an entertainment platform that just feeds you stuff from all over the internet. And as someone who's interested in building a community of curious people, I'm hoping that I can use it as a mechanism to get people into the more community facilitated space, which to me is the long form channel.
I seem to keep going back to these parallels, but it does feel like there is some parallel with shorts and stingers from traditional news, or like breaking segments where they would come in, give you like the 30-second thing, stay tuned for later. Even like the more you know, like just like little messages about like interesting facts.
Totally.
Though it's almost like a reinvention of when news was put into commercials.
Yes, totally.
And one of my favorite things now is Reply with Short. There are whole channels where someone makes a comment. Usually they're about like movies, entertainment, or politics. And someone leaves a comment and then they reply with a short, and then someone leaves a comment to that, they reply with another short. And end up having these whole conversations with their commenters as their channel.
Totally. And that's the best version of it. Totally. And I think those bode really well for like cultural creation and trending creation and dances and sing-alongs and all this stuff. I haven't really focused on using it as a discourse mechanism because, again, I just haven't felt from my audience that what I'm putting out there in that 60 seconds is enough for them to grab onto to like have an actual response. I'm usually describing some facts of like this just happened in Haiti. But it's it's an evolving thing for us, and hopefully we can unlock it. Shorts aren't going away, so we do have to figure it out. And there's been some big successes for us in some ways, but again, we're interested in giving people information literacy about how to handle the world and how to think critically around the world, and you just can't do that in 60 seconds. In a world